Luke, we have missed you. I know our audience remembers you were out last month. You donated a kidney to your brother. You've been home recovering. We are so glad having you back. How are you?
Well, thanks so much for having me back. I'm doing better. I wouldn't say I'm fully recovered yet, but I'm a lot better than I was 6 weeks ago. So I'm up and at 'em. Thanks. Thank you for the very nice segment.
You've got 2 weeks left, so you better get to 100% soon because we're going to need you. Susan, I want to start by playing something Donald Trump said earlier today about how President Biden is handling the current transition. Watch this.
You know, they talk about a transition. They're always saying, oh, no, we want to have a smooth transition from party to party, of government. Well, they're making it really difficult. They're throwing everything they can in the way. They're giving out trillions of dollars in nonsense.
Susan, I'm not even sure how to react to this. Donald Trump is talking about some of Joe Biden's recent policy decisions, okay? He said that today, exactly 4 years after we saw absolute chaos break out as the Capitol, as the nation was still in the depths of a pandemic. We never saw a transition with that much chaos in any American lifetime. What's your take?
Yeah, look, I mean, you can amplify a lie a million times, as Trump and his followers have done over the last few years, as they did again today. It still doesn't make it any more true to repeat it over and over and over again. I think all day long of the words of Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader at the time, whose courage failed him when it came to the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump. But what did he say? He said that Donald Trump was both practically and morally responsible for the events of January 6, 2021. And I think that, history will record that as a fact, regardless of the amount of gaslighting and spin around it that we've heard now, that we will hear over the next 4 years of the second Trump presidency.
Luke, you were in the building on January 6th. 4 years ago today, you covered the aftermath. What stuck out to you today watching this process?
Well, it was just night and day from 4 years ago. January 6th should not be a contentious or a calamitous event. It's supposed to be sort of a pro forma session almost, where you have the Congress just doing its constitutional duty to certify the correct results of the election. Today you saw a stark contrast to 4 years ago. It took about 30 minutes today to do this certification. Last year, it was 4 years ago, it was 14 hours of complete chaos. I mean, as you laid out in the opening, 150 police officers assaulted, people who got concussions, people who almost died, and the officers almost died. You had protesters who died during the assault on the Capitol. Complete chaos, a disruption of the constitutional process, mayhem, a dark and depressing day for basically everybody there that really shook the Capitol for months, if not years afterwards. And what you saw today was the opposite of that. You saw what happens when the losing candidate acknowledges that they lost and does the professional thing, their constitutional duty, and certifies the election. And that's what we saw today with Vice President Harris. She didn't try to whip up a crowd. She didn't try to lie about the election results. She didn't try to amass people to come to Washington and protest and storm the building. She certified the election, which was her job.
John, I want to make Susan blush by sharing something really smart that our friend Peter Baker said over the weekend. Watch this.
If you woke up on January 7th of 2021 with the glass still shattered on the floor of the Capitol and the smoke rising and the troops are surrounding the building, and you had said that Donald Trump will be president in 4 years, nobody would have believed that. Anybody who says that today is not telling you the truth. We weren't 100% sure he was going to make it out 2 more weeks. Broadly speaking, it turned out that his electorate still wanted him. And that held power over the elected officials who didn't. And that's the real story here, is that they did not find what he did on January 6th to be disqualifying. And therefore, the Congress and the elected officials went along with it.
John, January 7th, 2021, there were certainly not a majority of Americans that would think Donald Trump would retake the White House, but he is about to. Does that tell us that Americans as a whole are okay with what happened 4 years ago today?
So number one, absolutely not. I don't think that tells us that the majority of Americans are okay with January 6th. What I think it tells us is that a lot of Americans who voted for Donald Trump, a lot of Americans who are not all right with January 6th, do not prioritize that over some of the other things that Donald Trump was offering. Certainly part of his base is happy with January 6th. You can tell because Donald Trump has exalted the people who were convicted of crimes on of the January 6th crimes as patriots, as people who have been treated poorly by their government rather than prosecuted for crimes. So there's absolutely a piece of that Donald Trump base that really loves it. But there's also a set of voters who voted for Donald Trump who do not think that's appropriate, but also do not prioritize it. And just for viewers who might not know, the reason Susan would blush at the comments of Peter Baker, I know it's a big secret here that they're married. But quite a competition for who says the smarter things between the two of them.
That is very true. That's why when they co-write a book together, you better read it. Susan, you did say a second ago, though, what the history books will tell us, and history doesn't lie. But I'm not sure about that because you wrote over the weekend, or excuse me, over the holidays about some folks who are trying to rewrite history. How have Republicans managed to reimagine what actually happened 4 years ago? And are we going to see more of that in American politics moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely, Steph. Thank you. And I'm just going to not address all of the personal comments because I would say that it is about revisionism and, the rewriting of history that has become very central to the project of Donald Trump and many of his followers, because it's not just a question of, what the rank and file Republican voters thought or believe about January 6th. But I've been really struck by the extent to which even many Republican elites, wealthy business leaders, people who know better, people who spoke out about Donald Trump's conduct in the immediate aftermath of January 6th and on that day. That includes, by the way, pretty much the entire Republican leadership in both the House and the Senate. Many of them are now walking back their comments of that period of time, deleting them altogether from social media, pretending that they didn't mean it, or apologizing because somehow they were wrong and, they shouldn't have spoken so harshly about the event, and they somehow bought into hysteria generated by Democrats or something like that. And so you see a very active project of revisionism, of rewriting of history. And I think that is at the core of what Donald Trump is offering the country right now. It's not just January 6th that he's rewriting the history of. It's the entire last year of the Trump presidency, which he campaigned essentially on a platform of let's just forget about 2020 and I'll campaign on how great the economy was before 2020. And that was accepted by a remarkably large number of American voters. And, when you produce a kind of rewriting of history, a propaganda, it's a remarkably effective thing in the hands of someone like Donald Trump, who is very, very skilled at putting out a narrative. And he is constantly revising any situation to create facts that suit him or his version of history. And I think that what we're seeing with January 6th and the revisionism around that is an extreme form of Donald Trump, a distillation of who he is as a person and as a politician.
We actually saw Vice President Harris speak today. She spoke after certifying the results, and I want to share a bit of that.
I do believe very strongly that America's democracy is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. Every single person, their willingness to fight for and respect the importance of our democracy. Otherwise, it is very fragile, and it will not be able to withstand moments of crisis. And today, America's democracy stood.
John, are we going to see Democrats stand by this important message of defending democracy? Because some argue it was a failed political message and they never should have done it. Because what she said today, that was important.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two things could be true, Steph. I think that you can want to defend democracy. You can believe that you are defending democracy by conducting yourself in a certain way, both in winning and in losing, by respecting norms, by respecting rules, and at the same time campaign on issues that give you a better chance of winning over that small sliver of swing state voters that that make a difference, or sort of amp up your side and depress the other side a little bit. I think we saw in this election that defending democracy was an issue that a lot of Democrats really cared about, but it was not the issue that I think was decisive. And if you want to defend democracy, the first thing you have to do, and if you believe your party is defending democracy, first thing you have to do is win on economics, win on those issues at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs: food, shelter, the basic needs of people. If you do that, then you get to defend democracy, or you get to do whatever else you want to do, whatever's in your ideological playbook.